So this is another installment in the series where I want to talk about the design philosophies of wild classes, be changed for them to, be more fair, be a little stronger if they have cards that should be buffed rather than the ones that are being pushed currently. As such, I want to start with something like Invigorate. I don't believe Invigorate should be a strict upgrade over Wild Growth. I think there should be some form of downside to Invigorate if you are choosing the mana option. As it currently stands, there's no reason to run Wild Growth, which, relatively speaking, is a fair card. I think 2 mana Wild Growth is fair for Wild, but having Invigorate in the format makes it so you don't want to play it, and I don't think that's good. A proposed change, of course, would be to make Invigorate 3 mana, but then that would make Invigorate unplayable, and that's a little bit, not the exact goal I'm going for. I want Invigorate to be a side grade that you use in a Reno deck, but not something that is strictly better than Wild Growth. I think a change like this. Choose one, deal 2 damage to an enemy minion. If it dies, get an empty mana crystal or draw a card would be a lot better. I think this makes Invigorate have its downside, of course, being that it has to kill the minion to ramp, but it gives Druid a usable early game removal card, which the class does desperately need. Actually, it's kind of crazy how bad Druid is early game if you don't get your ramp. So I think this, really patches together a lot of Druid's weaknesses as a class, but makes Invigorate more of a, side grade to Wild Growth, as well as slowing down Invigorate for slower combo matchups, which is, I think, a area that it needs to be. I think Druid is too polarizing as a class currently. It's too weak into aggro, but it's too good into other combo decks because it's just faster. So this hits the nail on both of them by slowing down Invigorate against combo and ramping it up against aggro. I think that is a good place for the class to go against or to go into. And yeah, a lot of the series is just removing polarization from classes, I feel like. And I think this is a perfect way to do so. Another card I want to highlight is Gibberling. Gibberling was a very, very, very powerful minion for Token Druid for a not long time. It actually got nerfed pretty fast from 2 to 1 mana. I think all you do is change it back to 1 mana. I think Token Druid is a deck that should exist. It doesn't have that many support cards that have been printed over the last few years. Gibberling mainly just synergizes with the cheap spells that are in Druid. And that's why Gibberling is just such a good Token Druid minion. It would still be awkward and probably too slow to beat other, board-based aggro decks like, Shadow Priest and Kingsbane and even maybe Beast Hunter, especially because of Dreadscale. But it would give Druid an aggro deck. That's the thing. Druid just only has combo decks, and I think that every class should have at least 2 types of decks from the meta triangle. Aggro and combo, I think, is fair for Druid. Druid doesn't really have control decks, and I think that's fine, but only being combo decks is not good for the health of a class, because sometimes you're going to have to nerf cards. So, to put a class more in line, so you want to have a backup for the class. Yes, Druid is a combo class, but Druid should have, backup aggro decks, so it still has something to play. That's an issue with something like Hunter, where Hunter only has 1 deck, and the deck isn't good. And it hasn't been good for a long time, no matter what people try and tell you. So, it's one of the things I want to avoid when I'm obviously going to nerf Druid cards. That being said, I think Gibberling going to 1, easy change. It would be very good for Spell Token Druid. Of course, we can't talk about how to make Druid more fair and wild without talking about Wildheart Guff. I think that Guff does need a mana nerf, just strictly it does. I think that 6 mana would definitely be more fair. 7 mana would probably make it a little too slow for Wild, but I think it has to go to something like 6 mana. That being said, you could maybe push it to 7 mana, but revert the hero power to gain mana the same turn you use it. I think that would be more fair. But I think 6 mana with everything else being the same is definitely fair for Guff. It slows down these ultra combo Druids like I'm talking about, so it makes it more fair into other slower decks, because currently it's just, if you're playing against Druid as a slower deck, you are going to lose. It's just guaranteed. And I don't like polarization in Wild. I think it is very bad and unhealthy for the format because, say, every other good deck in the format is a slow deck, instantly, this Astalor Druid becomes the best deck in the entire game, which, again, is what happened with Reno Druid. And I think that polarization just does not do good things for the players. That being said, this makes it, of course, still relatively the same into aggro, because Guff wasn't that great into aggro anyway, but on the flip side, you can take a very strong anti-aggro card like Mulveric, and I think what you do is you first have to nerf the health. That's just obvious. And then I think you change it from honorable kill to your minions have what the heck? Sorry. 1 second. I think that Mulveric should be something like this. 4 mana, 2/3, rush. Whenever your minions have, whenever I kill an enemy minion, summon a 2/1 Wyvern with rush. You nerf the health of the Wyvern, so they're less likely to stay on board, and you nerf the health of Mulveric, so it's less likely to, live multiple turns, but still one really big board swing. I think removing Honorable Kill makes Mulveric a lot less clunky, it makes it a lot more powerful, and of course these nerfs are to justify it. Mulveric currently is just a really weird card where it has really defining strong matchups. Of course it's great into even Shaman, and then it's kind of useless into a lot of other aggro decks. And I think that that's not where a card like Mulveric should be. I think it should be this one-time, really good into aggro card. However, it still struggles immensely against 3 health minions, which is intentional. It should be very hard to kill the Void Touch Attendant, but you can kill the Shadow Bomber and the Churgeon and maybe a Brigand, right? But the Void Touch will still be alive. I think that that is a fine way for a card to work, where it, especially because it's going to clear most of the board. It will keep up a Jolly Roger, or keep up a Toy Boat, a Ship's Cannon, but it will clear, the Fillet Fighters, the Prize Plunderers, the Patches, the Brigand again, the smaller minions, the ones that have less board impact, but have, battle cries, right? I think that that is a better way for Mulveric to work, and it gives Druid removal without giving it insane removal. Obviously, if their entire board is 1/1s, yeah, I'm aware, it's just strict buff, blah, 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 whatever. But I think that, like I'm saying, this is a better direction for a card like Mulveric to go. It gives Druid better anti-aggro tools, yes, but that's what Druid should have. Druid should be a little better than against aggro and a little worse against other combo decks. Polarization is bad. We need to change stuff. Obviously, none of these changes really affect Druid against quote-unquote control decks, which don't exist. Still have to argue with people on this, but yeah. Another card I think that should be changed is, I think, post-rotation Nestmaw should not go to a 3/5 again. Actually, I think it should go to a 4/4. This does 2 things. It makes it so that if we ever get more aggressive dragon tools, that Nestmaw becomes a little better as an aggressive minion, while also giving it back that 1 stat point to make it more in line with where it was originally. I think it having 5 health is not actually a very good thing. I think that it becomes too good into aggro, being a 5 health taunt that costs 0 mana, but giving it 4 attack doesn't really affect the aggro matchups as much as it pushes for a little more tempo for Druid. This also goes in line with the Whelp. I think Splish Splash Whelp should go to a 2/1 post-rotation. They were nerfed for standard. They weren't too crazy and wild, but I don't think that Druid should have a 0 mana 3/5 taunt just on demand like it did before. The 4/4, like I'm saying, pushes a little more tempo in these, combo and slower control matchups. And if we ever get a aggro dragon Druid, which we could in theory, I think that this would be nice of a change for the deck rather than it being a 3/5. And last but not least, I think I say for a lot of players when I think that Ultimate Infestation is one of the most iconic Druid cards of all time, and it feels almost wrong that it's not playable in Wild. The easy change, of course, would be to make it 8 mana. It would likely see play at that point, genuinely, but I think that keeping all of these effects might be a little too good if you did that. You could obviously change it to a 4/4/4/4/4, but that would probably kill or make the card a lot worse than intentional. So I think what you would do is you change this to 4, you change this to 4. Oops. Where is that? And then you can make, and then I think that it might be fine if you change this to 4. I think changing it from 5 to 4 armor genuinely would do a bad thing for the card. Of course, losing 1 on all of these is not great, but losing the 5 armor really makes it so if you ever get, to the 8 mana point against aggro decks, which does happen, not all the time, but it does happen, where you'll be like, shit, dude, I haven't drawn anything great all game. I just need this to get me over the hump, where an aggro deck should lose at that point in the game. That's why I think the 5 armor is good to keep. Of course, thematically, it makes a little less sense, but you can understand my line of process, right? If you're getting to that 8 mana against aggro decks, you really want the 5 armor to stay rather than 4. It really gets you over the hump where you're just like, dude, I just drew terribly all game. My aggro opponent also drew terribly, but they shouldn't be able to win from this point. Like, they just shouldn't. They shouldn't be allowed to win from this point. If you go to 8 mana, your aggro opponent should not be allowed to win at that point. So I think that Ultimate Infestation going to 8 mana with 5 armor specifically, it has to. I think it has to be 5 armor. I don't think that any of these other numbers can stay as 5s. I think that it would be unfair for every single other one of the numbers stay as 5s. Draw 5 would definitely be unfair for 8 mana with the rest of the cards. 5/5 would be a little too strong for tempo reasons. Tempo does matter. I don't know why people don't think it does. Deal 5 damage would be a little too good, I think, as well, just to push a little more face damage. And then, obviously, you can't make it 5 mana. But yeah, I think that doing it like this would be a little more fair. And I think this one can definitely be argued. If you understand where I'm coming from and my reasonings for Druid, then you would understand. But, tomato, tomato, it is what it is. I think in current year, we have Dark Bomb, which is 2 mana, deal 3 damage to a character. If it dies, draw a shadow spell. I think we can change Wrath to remove the choose 1 effect. Oops. What the fuck? 1 second. I'm sorry. This website's cringe sometimes. I think we could easily change Wrath to 2 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. If it dies, draw a spell. Or I guess you can make it a minion. I don't think it should be strictly draw a card. I think that it being a tutor makes the card a little worse and a little better. It's just the trade-off of being a tutor. I think that Wrath should slot into a card like this. Druid, I keep talking about the polarization of matchups for Druid. I think that Wrath should work this way. It doesn't seem like it would be too crazy, all things considered. In a vacuum, this card is incredibly similar to Dark Bomb. However, it's, a little different. You could make the argument that it should be 2 just so it can't kill a Void Touch Attendant, and I would believe that argument. I would believe it. I think it would probably, I think it should be 2, actually. I think it should be. Maybe at 2 it could be draw a card. Deal 2 damage to a minion. If it dies, draw a card. That could be fair. I don't think Druid should be able to kill Void Touch Attendant in 1 card. I think that is the break point. I think that Druid should not be able to kill Void Touch Attendant with 1 card outside of, I guess, Swipe Now. But for 2 mana, it definitely shouldn't be able to. Druid still needs to be weak into aggro, but it should be a little less polarizing. And of course, Wrath becomes a little bit better because it's now guaranteed to draw a card. It doesn't have the clunky, 2014 choose 1 effect, where that was kind of useless. And yeah, I think that I think it was 6. I can't remember how many I did. I'm not going to lie to you. Druid cards, I think that they are perfect examples of cards that can be changed for different things. Now I want to do some, at least 1, maybe 2 cards that I think are just fun Druid cards that aren't really iconic, aren't really that crazy known, aren't even that new, that I think should be changed because I like them personally and I want them to be better so that we have more archetypes for Druid. A card that I have been enjoying a lot lately is Savage Striker. I think that is very good in Even Druid, and Even Druid is actually a pretty decent deck, all things considered. I think a way that you can make Savage Striker better is 2 mana. use your hero power, then deal damage to an enemy minion equal to your attack. For most Druid decks, this just still is just +1 damage for whatever attack you have, or +2, +3, I don't know, +7 for most decks. But it makes Savage Striker push 1 damage guaranteed, and it gives you 1 attack because it used your hero power and 1 armor. I think this change makes the card significantly better. It makes even Druid actually quite strong, but it doesn't really buff these slower Druids like I'm talking about. It gives an aggro Druid deck more power. I think this one is a very, very good, I think Savage Striker could have been a lot better than it was in Rastakhan's. I think Rastakhan's really underdid the attack Druid archetype, and buffing Savage Striker really kind of brings it back, making Rastakhan's go full circle. I think this would be a good change. It is reminiscent of Rake, but it requires you to play your Groovy Cats, which, Rake technically didn't require you to do that. It would just be 1 mana, deal 2 to a minion, and then if you had any attack, it would be better, and then you have attack. This is, twice as much mana as the original one. It requires you to have, all the Groovy Cats set up. Or it requires you to have the Free Spirit set up. You could get armor that way. I think that a force trigger to your hero power would be a good thing for Druid as well. That being said, I want to talk about another Even Druid card, because Even Druid is probably my favorite Druid deck. I think continuing the Savage Striker, Rastakhan's Rumble attack Druid thing, I think Gonk could be changed. There's a lot of ways you could change Gonk. I think that you could make it so Gonk is 2 mana. I genuinely think Gonk could go to 2 mana. It might be a little too strong, but Druid having to send their face into a minion definitely makes it a little, better. I think you could easily turn Gonk into, 2 mana, 2/2. I think that would be a fair stat line for its effect. After your hero attacks and kills a minion, it may attack again. The minion has to stay on board. You have to have the 2 mana attacks. It's unlike Multi-Strike or the Demon Hunter weapon. It requires your hero to send their face into minions. You take a lot of damage in aggro matchups. I think this could easily be the direction that you send Gonk. Of course, you still have the weird combo potential where you summon a million of these and do all that, but that was never good. It was never even slightly good. So if you make Gonk 2 mana, I doubt that this would really break those decks. And I think that it would just be a very interesting way to make Even Druid a better deck. Of course, I'm a little biased. I want Even Druid to be good because I enjoy the deck, but I'm mainly proposing it as an alternate archetype to Token Druid, just regular, standard ramp Druid. It is a different kind of different type of Druid aggro deck archetype. Beast Druid would also have been an option that I could have done stuff to, but I think Beast Druid is a deck that gets enough support, usually, especially a lot more than Attack Druid. Attack Druid has gotten 2 expansions of support, I think, maybe 3. Yeah. That's why I think we should maybe do a little something for it. I lied. I was going to do 2, but I also want to talk about Spirit of the Raptor. I think Spirit of the Raptor is a pretty interesting card. I think that the idea behind it is you were going to hero power minions with Gonk, but that was not actually that great, right? Hero power minions. I think that you could change Spirit of the Raptor to be similar to Spirit, or Team Spirit, I think it's called, or whatever. Well, the Demon Hunter one that has +2 attack, just naturally. I think you can make it similar to that. By that, I mean, for 1 turn after your attacks with minion, draw a card. I don't think that should be what this is. I think that doesn't thematically fit with the area Hero Power Druid goes into. I think it should be stealth at the start of your turn. Use your hero power. I think that would be a much better way for the card to work, and I think that it would be actually too strong at 1 mana. I think that this not only is an Even Druid buff, I think that it should be a change to make the card a little slower. I think that 1 mana would probably be a little too strong for Questline Druid. So I think for 2 mana, it makes it a little worse for Questline Druid, and it makes it a little better for what's it called? For even Druid. Maybe you shouldn't say at the start of your turn. It should be, how do I say this? Well, I guess it could just be, how would you word it for it to work? Let me think. This is a little wordy and not how Blizzard would do this effect, but you could say it like when summoned or battle cry, like use your battle cry and at the start of your turn use your hero power. I guess that would be the best way to do it, but none of the spirits are battle cries, so I don't really like how that fits, but thematically it does make sense to what I believe the card should be. So let me rewrite that. So it'd be battle cry and at the start of your turn, so your hero power. I think that would be a more elegant way to do it, but this isn't something. This is a little wordy and not a way Blizzard would make a card read personally. But this does fit with what I'm talking about. It makes the card usable for questline druids and for even druid, but it doesn't make it too strong for questline while making it a little better, I'll admit, for even druid. That being said, if you enjoy, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think about these card changes below. I believe that these are, a good direction for Druid to go. It nerfs a little bit of cards that I think are a little problematic. It buffs cards that I think would be genuinely more fair in directions they should go. It makes forgotten cards a little bit better, and it definitely makes Roscon's Rebel a whole lot better. That's for sure. All right. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.